Whenever I sit down for a meal, I sometimes pull up a MrBeast video and watch it. Seeing numbers like hundreds of millions of views on videos such as Squid Game is honestly hard to believe. Many people probably still remember when MrBeast was just an unknown YouTuber, slowly working his way up until he was competing with some of the biggest names on the platform back then. The battle between PewDiePie and T-Series had the entire YouTube community watching every subscriber count. Reaching 100 million subscribers was considered an almost unimaginable achievement. But a few years later, MrBeast came along and shattered one limit after another, limits that people had previously thought would be extremely difficult to surpass. What is even more remarkable is that behind this massive YouTube channel lies much more than views. Jimmy Donaldson has built an entire business ecosystem around the MrBeast brand, with ventures spanning food, beverages, retail, and entertainment. From a young man filming videos in his bedroom, he transformed his internet popularity into a business empire worth billions of dollars. At what makes this story even more interesting is that Jimmy was not born into a wealthy family or handed a major business platform from the start. He was born in 1990 in Kansas and later grew up in Greenville, North Carolina. His family went through significant challenges. His mother worked hard to support the family. His father had served in the military, and his parents divorced when Jimmy was still young. In other words, his starting point was relatively ordinary compared with the empire he would eventually build, but from a very young age, Jimmy developed an unusual obsession with YouTube. He could spend hours watching other creators, trying to figure out why one video attracted millions of views while another barely received any attention. At just 13 years old, Jimmy started his first YouTube channel under the name MrBeast6000, inspired by a username he had previously used on Xbox Live. His early content mainly focused on Minecraft and other simple videos that fit the popular trends on YouTube at the time. The difference was that Jimmy did not simply upload videos and wait for luck to do the rest. He studied the data, analyzed titles, thumbnails, watch time, and audience behavior. Over the years, studying YouTube became almost a full-time job for him. In 2016, Jimmy decided to drop out of college and devote himself entirely to YouTube. For many people at the time, this was an extremely risky gamble. YouTube was not yet considered a career that could reliably provide a stable future, and Jimmy had not achieved enough success to prove that his decision would pay off. The real breakthrough came in 2017. Jimmy uploaded a video based on an idea that sounded almost ridiculous, counting from 1 to 10 万. There was no complicated script and no spectacular setting. Yet the video went on to attract tens of millions of views. That success taught Jimmy an important lesson. Internet content does not have to be complicated to become entertaining. An extremely simple idea can still become a phenomenon if it is executed in a way that is different enough, long enough, and extreme enough that not long afterward, Jimmy began experimenting with another type of content. He used his own money to give $10,000 to a homeless man and turned the entire act into a story for YouTube. This was when the signature MrBeast formula began to take shape. An idea that anyone could understand. A large enough reward or challenge to grab attention, an emotional story, and production designed to make viewers want to find out what happens next. Jimmy seemed to have discovered something that many content creators take years to understand. Success is not always about how complicated your idea is. What matters is whether you can turn a simple idea into an experience compelling enough to make millions of people want to watch. From videos that attracted only a handful of views in his bedroom, Jimmy Donaldson began laying the foundation for one of the biggest personal brands in YouTube history. Building on those early successes, MrBeast gradually developed a very different growth strategy. Money earned from one video was not treated as the final profit. Instead, it became the budget for the next, even bigger video. Every new project had to surpass the previous one in at least one way. The prize had to be large enough to attract attention. The concept had to be more ambitious, the visual quality had to improve, and the production scale had to become increasingly professional. When a video reached tens or even hundreds of millions of views, it became highly attractive to major brands. More sponsors meant bigger budgets. Bigger budgets allowed Jimmy to hire more people, build a stronger team, and execute ideas that would have previously seemed almost impossible. A powerful growth cycle began to emerge. Bigger videos generated more viewers. More viewers attracted more sponsors. Sponsorships created more capital. And that capital was reinvested into even bigger videos. By June 2024, MrBeast officially surpassed PewDiePie to become the most subscribed individual YouTuber in the world. The system continued expanding rapidly, accumulating hundreds of millions of subscribers across multiple channels and generating billions of views each year. In terms of its ability to reach audiences, this had already become a media empire rather than simply a YouTube channel, but Jimmy understood that relying solely on YouTube still came with a major weakness. The platform is influenced by advertising, algorithms, market conditions, and decisions made by brands, factors that creators do not have complete control over. That is why, around 2020, MrBeast began shifting its strategy. Instead of treating YouTube as his entire career, Jimmy gradually brought different business ventures into the same ecosystem. The goal was no longer simply to make money from content. It was to build a diversified entertainment company, complete with a management structure, corporate operations, and outside capital. The notable point is not the parent company structure itself, because this model is already very familiar in the business world. What makes it interesting is that Jimmy has brought this way of thinking into the creator economy, instead of allowing each project to operate as a completely separate business. The brands within the MrBeast ecosystem can support one another. YouTube content helps promote products. Those products, in turn, introduce the MrBeast brand to new groups of customers. Shows and projects outside YouTube then bring those audiences back to his content channels. In other words, Jimmy is no longer simply building a single YouTube channel. He is creating an ecosystem in which each division operates as its own business while also serving as a marketing engine for the others. This approach has several similarities to major entertainment conglomerates like Disney, where content, brands, products, and audiences are all connected in a self-reinforcing cycle. And if we had to identify one of the clearest examples of MrBeast's strategy of expanding beyond YouTube, it would be Feastables, launched in 2022. Feastables is a chocolate brand created by Jimmy to directly capitalize on the enormous audience he had built over many years. At the time, YouTubers selling their own products was nothing particularly new. But entering the fast-moving consumer goods industry on a serious scale was an entirely different challenge. Jimmy wasn't simply trying to sell a chocolate bar with his name on it. He was testing a much bigger question. Could the influence of a content creator be transformed into a consumer brand large enough to compete in the traditional marketplace? That question opened the next chapter in MrBeast's transformation from a YouTuber into a diversified business empire. The chocolate market was already dominated by giants such as Hershey, Mars, and many other well-established brands. So entering the industry as a newcomer was far from easy. Yet, the way MrBeast brought Feastables to market was highly unconventional and unmistakably reflected his personal style. Asterisk from the very beginning, Jimmy Donaldson turned the brand launch itself into entertainment. He organized an elimination-style competition, documented the entire process, and brought in Gordon Ramsay as a judge. The winner was given the choice between $500,000 in cash or a chocolate factory. The concept almost felt like a real-life version of the chocolate factory from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. During its early stages, Feastables generated relatively promising sales, reaching roughly $10 million. That figure was not enough to create a massive breakthrough. But it did demonstrate one important thing. MrBeast's audience was willing to spend money on products he promoted. The real turning point came when Beast Industries changed its distribution strategy. Instead of relying primarily on its website, the company began placing its products in major retail chains. Walmart became one of the key expansion points, followed by Target, 7-Eleven, and many other retailers. Once the products became available in places where consumers already shopped regularly, their reach increased dramatically, by 2026. Feastables was reportedly available at tens of thousands of retail locations across the United States, Canada, and Mexico. In 2024 alone, the brand was estimated to have generated roughly $250 million in revenue and around $20 million in profit. Even more significantly, revenue from this business reportedly surpassed MrBeast's YouTube operations for the first time. That represents a major shift. MrBeast is no longer simply a content creator making money from views. He is gradually turning his audience into the foundation of a genuine business conglomerate. But the most interesting question is this: why can selling a single chocolate bar sometimes generate better economics than producing videos that receive hundreds of millions or even billions of views? The answer lies in the cost structure. A large-scale MrBeast video can consume an enormous budget. Prize money, location rentals, filming equipment, production crews, employees, post-production, and countless additional expenses can quickly add up to a massive amount. By contrast, for a consumer product like chocolate, much of the major investment typically occurs during the stages of developing the formula, manufacturing the product, and establishing the distribution network. Once those systems are operating efficiently, the cost of getting an additional product into a customer's hands can be significantly lower than the cost of continually producing another blockbuster video. And MrBeast has another advantage that very few new brands possess. His audience has effectively become his advertising network. Whenever a product appears in one of his videos, tens or even hundreds of millions of people can potentially see it. He does not need to purchase an equivalent amount of traditional advertising to generate enormous brand awareness. In other words, he has transformed the attention of his audience into an asset that can be converted into revenue according to projections reported by the media. Beast Industries had previously expected Feastables to reach roughly $520 million in revenue in 2026, with a longer-term ambition of scaling the business into a multi-billion-dollar operation. However, MrBeast's journey toward building a business empire has not always been successful. One of the most prominent examples is MrBeast Burger. The project emerged in late 2020 and, at least on paper, was an extremely clever idea. Instead of spending huge amounts of money building dozens of new restaurants, MrBeast partnered with virtual dining concepts and leveraged existing commercial kitchens. Partner restaurants simply had to prepare the burgers, package them under the MrBeast brand, and deliver them to customers. This model significantly reduces costs. There is no need to build new locations, operate a massive restaurant chain, or directly manage every individual outlet, but that very advantage also became its biggest weakness. The brand carried the MrBeast name, but the quality of the food depended on each partner kitchen. Some locations performed well, while others left customers complaining about the quality of the burgers. When the customer experience is inconsistent, the brand that ultimately takes the hit is still MrBeast. The situation eventually became serious enough to turn into a legal dispute between the two sides. MrBeast accused his partner of damaging his reputation, while the other side responded with accusations of its own. After a lengthy dispute, MrBeast Burger ultimately came to an end in 2024. The failure taught MrBeast an expensive lesson: you can outsource production, and you can rely on partners to operate the system. But when your brand name is printed on the packaging, customers will still associate the entire experience with your brand, and that is precisely why building a real business is completely different from creating a viral video. On YouTube, MrBeast can control almost every aspect of the audience's experience. But once he enters the consumer goods world, He has to deal with factories, logistics, retailers, business partners, product quality, and countless other factors that exist outside the studio, because when you allow someone else to put your brand on a product but cannot fully control the quality that customers actually receive, the risk will always be there. And in 2024, MrBeast faced another setback with Lunchly, a project he launched alongside Logan Paul and KSI. Lunchly was positioned as a ready-to-eat packaged lunch product, marketed as a better alternative to Lunchables. Each box included snacks, a bottle of Prime, and a Feastables bar. On paper, the idea sounded quite smart. 3 influencers with enormous fan bases could combine their audiences around a single product, allowing all 3 to leverage their existing customer bases. However, problems began to emerge not long after the product hit store shelves. Food-focused YouTuber Rosanna Pansino posted a video showing what appeared to be mold on a Lunchly product. Other customers later shared similar experiences on social media, causing the controversy to spread rapidly. The danger here was that this was no longer just a disappointing video that audiences might forget a few days later. This was food something customers were actually putting into their bodies. As a result, any issue involving product quality or safety could cause far more serious damage to the brand's reputation. You can have millions of followers and easily convince them to try a new product. But if the actual experience fails to live up to expectations, fame alone may not be enough to convince those customers to buy the product a second time. In fact, a massive audience can make negative feedback spread even faster. That said, if we are talking about MrBeast's most ambitious project in terms of scale, Beast Games is the name that truly stands out. Beast Games is a reality competition show produced for Amazon Prime Video under a deal signed in 2024 that was considered one of the biggest agreements ever made with an internet content creator. At its core, Beast Games still follows the familiar MrBeast formula: a huge number of contestants, a series of increasingly challenging competitions, and an extremely attractive cash prize. But instead of packing everything into a single YouTube video, the concept was expanded into a multi-episode television series featuring roughly 1,000 participants. Contestants had to continuously survive elimination rounds as they competed for the grand prize. In the simplest terms, you could describe it as a real-life version of Squid Game. Except the goal here was to win money rather than stay alive. When Beast Games premiered in late 2024, it quickly attracted a massive audience and set records on Prime Video, judging purely by its ability to generate buzz and its initial commercial performance. The show represented a major step forward for MrBeast, transforming him from a YouTuber, expanding into business, into a creator capable of taking his content formula into a global platform forever. Before the show was officially released in September 2024, a major controversy emerged. A group of former participants filed a class action lawsuit against MrBeast's production company and several other parties, including Amazon. The allegations covered a range of issues, from accommodations and access to medical care to the way the production team organized and managed the filming process. More seriously, some participants also made allegations of sexual harassment and claimed that contestants' rights and welfare had not been adequately protected during production. MrBeast denied these serious allegations, arguing that some of the claims had been exaggerated or presented in a way that did not accurately reflect what happened. He also explained that certain behind-the-scenes documents and images could not be released immediately because they were directly connected to the show's content. In subsequent interviews, MrBeast continued to defend the project and said that the experience had actually been quite positive for most of the contestants. According to him, many participants would even be willing to return if they had the opportunity to compete in another season. Nevertheless, the legal dispute continued, and at this point, there has been no final court ruling. This also raised an interesting question: could the controversy itself have unintentionally become a massive form of publicity for the show? Because despite all the media attention and controversy, Amazon did not back away. Instead, it continued investing in the brand. For the second season, the project was developed on an even larger scale. The number of contestants was adjusted, while the prize money continued to increase significantly. Notably, the production team also brought in personnel who had previously worked on major survival reality shows. Along with the involvement of veteran host Jeff Ross, this could be seen as a sign that major entertainment platforms still view MrBeast as a brand with significant commercial appeal. In other words, despite repeatedly facing controversy, the value of the MrBeast name in the eyes of major partners does not appear to have disappeared, but the problems that followed began to emerge from within the business itself. In early 2026, a former senior manager filed a civil lawsuit that raised concerns about the workplace environment and the company's handling of policies involving female employees after childbirth. According to the lawsuit, the company allegedly did not have a sufficiently clear process for maternity leave, while also making work-related requests during periods when employers were on maternity leave. The company disputed the allegations and issued a response pushing back against the claims. However, even though the final legal outcome has yet to be determined, the case has raised another question about how MrBeast operates the business empire behind the image of a massive YouTube creator. Looking at all of these stories together, one thing becomes quite clear: building a massive YouTube channel is already an extremely difficult challenge. But turning that channel into a corporation with hundreds of employees is an entirely different story as the business began to expand. The problems MrBeast had to deal with were no longer simply about coming up with new ideas or finding ways to increase views. The focus shifted toward managing people, running an organization, dealing with legal issues, protecting the brand, and handling countless challenges that are familiar to virtually every large company. In other words, YouTube was only the starting point. Behind it was an actual business system. By the end of 2025, MrBeast once again became the center of controversy, but this time the cause was a project called Beastland. It was a larger-scale, limited-time entertainment attraction in Riyadh, designed around the spirit of the famous challenges that had appeared in MrBeast's videos. From a business perspective, the idea was fairly straightforward. MrBeast realized that his audience was not concentrated solely in the United States. The Middle East also has a massive community of fans. So, instead of monetizing his audience only through a screen, he brought the channel's signature experiences into the real world. Put simply, wherever the audience is, the brand tries to show up there. However, Beastland quickly sparked another debate. The project was organized as part of Riyadh Season, a program supported by the Saudi Arabian government to develop the tourism industry and promote the country's image internationally. That led some Western audiences and media outlets to question whether major influencers were unintentionally helping improve the image of a government that has frequently faced criticism over human rights issues. This is not actually a new controversy. For years, numerous sporting events, entertainment projects, and international ventures in the Gulf region have faced similar questions. When commercial and entertainment activities take place there, the line between promoting a brand and promoting a country's image can sometimes become difficult to distinguish. MrBeast was certainly not the first person to find himself in this situation, but his case is particularly noteworthy because it raises a broader question about the influencer economy. Once a YouTuber is no longer simply a video creator, but has become an entrepreneur operating on an international scale. Can they really continue to stay outside political and social issues? In reality, that is becoming increasingly difficult, and notably, Beast Industries would later move into a field that, at first glance, seemed completely unrelated to YouTube, financed in early 2026. MrBeast's company acquired Step, a fintech platform focused on younger customers. On the surface, the deal seemed surprising. Someone who became famous through YouTube and chocolate was now acquiring a financial technology company, two worlds that appeared to have almost nothing in common, but when you look at the size and demographics of MrBeast's audience, the strategy becomes much easier to understand. A large portion of MrBeast's followers are young people, which is precisely the demographic Step is trying to reach. What MrBeast possesses is not simply a massive number of viewers, but something that is incredibly valuable to startups. People's attention. A new fintech company typically has to spend enormous amounts of money on advertising, marketing, and customer acquisition campaigns. MrBeast, on the other hand, had already built a community of hundreds of millions of followers. He did not need to begin by buying attention from the market. He already owned it, even if only a very small percentage of that community converted into customers for financial products. The potential user base could still reach an enormous scale, and that is precisely what creates an important distinction between an ordinary creator and the business model MrBeast is building. He is no longer simply selling advertising within his videos. He is turning his audience into a kind of asset that can be leveraged krapel and is from food and entertainment to live experiences and FINTAIK. In other words, YouTube may no longer be the final destination for MrBeast. Instead, it has become an attention-generating machine. While that attention serves as the foundation for building a much larger business ecosystem, rather than simply making money from views, MrBeast has turned his own community of viewers into a platform for expanding into a wide range of other industries. It started with advertising revenue from YouTube. Then, that massive fan base became the foundation for brands and projects involving food, chocolate, reality television, theme parks, and even financial services. What all of these businesses have in common is one intangible but incredibly valuable asset: the attention of hundreds of millions of people around the world, and that is the bigger story behind Beast Industries. If we look at YouTube alone, MrBeast has reached a level that very few content creators have ever been able to achieve. But what is even more remarkable lies beyond the screen. Starting with a single YouTube channel, he has gradually built an entire business ecosystem worth billions of dollars. The journey began in an incredibly simple way. A 13-year-old boy sat in his bedroom, spending hours studying YouTube and making Minecraft videos. At the time, no one could have predicted that years later, that same kid would become the leader of a massive media and business empire. This is truly a remarkable case in the history of the internet. And if one day a creator comes along with 500 million subscribers, we may have to redefine what it actually means to be a YouTuber. But perhaps the most interesting lesson from MrBeast's story lies in the way he approaches the business itself. In the traditional business model, companies often have to spend enormous amounts of money to buy their customers' attention through advertising, media, and marketing. MrBeast has taken the exact opposite approach. He built the community and captured the attention first. Once he had accumulated a massive audience, he began finding ways to turn that attention into products, brands, and revenue. Put simply, instead of using money to buy an audience, MrBeast built an audience first, then turned that attention into money and continued reinvesting it into his ecosystem. From a computer in a bedroom to a multi-billion-dollar business empire, MrBeast's story demonstrates the incredible power of owning attention in the internet age. Thank you for watching the video all the way to the end. I'm Mr.Khổng. If you found this content interesting, don't forget to hit like and subscribe so you won't miss the next stories.